What unites?
No matter your religion, we are one. Let's
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, it's estimated that Nigeria suffered losses of more than $16.9 billion, and that's in damaged property, oil production, and agricultural produce in the 2012 flooding, which affected parts of the country. Now, increased flood disasters have been of concern, making it necessary for national early warning systems and response mechanisms to be put in place. Now, in furtherance of this is the 2018 Post-Flood Disaster Implementation Plan. Now, the gains and uniqueness of this program would be the subject of discussion in this second segment of NTA Tuesday Live. And I'll be here speaking with Dr. Olufemi Oke-Osonyitoru, who is Head Task Force National Early Warning and Response Mechanism in Nigeria and Senior Technical Advisor to the Vice President on Disaster Risks Management. Thanks for being here.
Hi.
Right. We're also here with Idris Abbas, Director General, FCT Emergency Management Agency. Thanks for being here with us tonight.
Good evening.
And let me also welcome to this program Usman Jimada of the Forum on Environmental Journalism. He is a member of the Society of Environmental Journalism. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
All right. As usual, we explained at the start of the program, you can be part of it. The platforms will be on your screen. You can take advantage of them. And remember all what we said at the start of the program. Once you put a call through and it gets through, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the holdback. So let's begin. Talk about early warnings systems and the response mechanism. Well, we have seen so many things happening in recent times, even in places that the people felt those things could not happen.
Yeah.
All right. Take the FCT, for instance, and people would say, look, quite recently we had things about tremors, and there would have been people who would have sworn that no such thing could ever take place in Nigeria, not even in the FCT. So what are the response mechanisms that we have in place today? If we had any disaster like we had in 2012 with the flooding, or if anything beyond that should happen?
Well, if you look at what we have in place today, we have a lot of institutions in place. For example, we have the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, which coordinates the key stakeholders in managing emergency today. We have the NIMET, which is the Nigeria Meteorological Agency. We have the Hydrological Agency, and in each state of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we have what we call the State Emergency Management Agency in place, and we have the Local Emergency Management Agency in place. Today, we are about having what we call the National Early Warning Agency, a sort of early warning and response mechanism in place. The key thing in all this is that all these key agencies have defined roles and responsibilities, and they are going to work together. And what we want to achieve is that our early warning will be prompt, effective, and the response that will come out of it will be swift. The purpose of this is to reduce the mortality or morbidity that is always associated with this. For example, let's look at the flood disaster we experienced in 2018, and let's just look at the yardstick of 2012. You will discover that in 2018 there are a lot of machinery put in place. Our warning was swift, prompt, to the extent that all the people that are around that area that are vulnerable, that are vulnerable to it, are quickly alerted about what they need to do and how they need to be evacuated from the scene. With this, you will discover that it is well coordinated in the sense that the way we operate all the situations, sites, everything well coordinated, and it was swift.
All right, let's come to you and public enlightenment in the case of disaster. Flooding has become perennial in this country. 2012, a huge disaster. We saw flooding this year as well. And the response to it, public enlightenment, knowing that people, and it would seem it's not just peculiar to Nigerians, it's all over the world. People do not readily leave when they are alerted on impending disasters. Some people decide to ride the storm. Some people think, well, it's not going to happen, it's never happened here. How do you begin to bring the people and use public enlightenment on issues of flooding and other disasters here?
Well, thank you very much. And I think what we need to do, we have to have some divergent approach to the entire way of enlightenment. Most of the enlightenment we carried about is elitist in nature. And we need to go to the grassroots. We need to be organizing the town hall meetings, community meetings, and then build resilience among the communities. Instead of rescuing them, let them be part of the rescue mission. And that is exactly what we are doing in the FCT Emergency Management Agency. We have brought all those divers, local divers, living in the communities. And we are teaching them the modern way, giving them the equipments. Because when there is flood and people are trapped, definitely before we get there, the communities are there. Sometimes they are the one calling us. But if we encourage them and put them part of the system we are operating, you will see that the response is very prompt, and then there will be result. Again, we have to use the local dialects of these communities to communicate and show them the kind of videos or clips that are existing within this country. For instance, we have to show them the flood devastating effect of it for last year, where it happens in the community they know. Not to bring the foreign films and showing them. That was why they were not believing. By the time you ask them, move, there is going to be flooding, move, they will say no. That has been a history. So, but now they know. If you tell them that so people were trapped and were killed as a result of flooding in so communities, and look at the video, they will definitely agree with you. And so that is exactly what we are doing now, so that we bring them together collectively. And before the rainy season, we had to, especially in FEMA, we had to go around all over the communities, door to door. We had to organize and show them all the videos and then caution them, tell them what to do now before the flood, before the rain. And then when there is flood, what also to do. And we had already earmarked, we have done the flood mapping of the FCT. We have identified the flood-prone areas. And then we had to concentrate and keep our surveillance and rescue team around those areas so that they will be sensitizing. We also brought other stakeholders, because it's not a one agency affair. Some agencies have to be there also. We cannot enforce the building codes. There is also an agency responsible for that. So we have to bring them and identify that this area is a floodplain and it's built, there is building on it. We want to know whether there is approval on it. If there is approval, you have to remove it. If there is no approval, you also have to remove it. So we have to collaborate and bring everybody into the scheme.
Environmental issues are not easily, assimilated by people. You know, it's hard to convince a lot of people that the environment changes depending on so many factors. And that's why you have the skepticism about impending natural disasters, for instance, and people will tell you, look, this place has never witnessed this before, so it cannot happen. I remember us doing something on flooding, and one of the responses we got was an agency was finding it difficult to convince some people that where they were farming was flood prone, because they said, look, my great-grandfather was here, nothing happened. My father was here, so how can you come and tell me now that it will happen?
Well, it's very difficult to get people to believe. I mean, right now, the most difficult thing is to get people to believe even that there is climate change. Climate change is something that is affecting every part of the world, globally, as a result of global warming. Now, these changes are taking place, affecting coastal areas, affecting sea levels, rivers, and flooding is occurring. Now, how do you educate people to know that all these kinds of things, especially human activities, the activities that people are carrying out, is affecting the flood disaster that is happening? These are, it's a Herculean task, because it's something that happened that you have to do scientifically. I mean, up till now, so many people are skeptical about climate change. I mean, you have a whole president now who doesn't even believe that it exists. How much more of ordinary people who are living, farming in coastal areas and plains. So you need to educate people. You need to tell them about how their activities are affected. Even things like dumping of rubbish or garbage in the drains. All these are part of the things that you need to explain, and you need to go into, like you said, maybe demonstration. You know, demonstrate to them that these things have consequences. You know, they have effect on farming communities, people who are carrying out farming in floodplains, and these are been year in, year out. Now, you can't really tell them to move. You know, you need to educate them continuously. You know, that's the only way you can get them to abandon old ways. You know,
Right,
and to move to new areas.
But sometimes we ask, is there adequate information out there about risk factors? People ask these things. Is there adequate information out there? Or maybe a lot of people just sit back and they rely more on mitigation efforts, and it's happened. And of course, cultural factors as well. People say, well, God has permitted it to happen, so we don't want to take precautions. But is there adequate information out there?
Well, if you look at it, there is adequate information, but we must look at those people that are vulnerable to all this, and that is what this government is trying to sort out. The people that are vulnerable to this flood disaster are those people with low social economy.
Right.
The people that they don't have access to good education. The people that the way their shelter were built around that flood-prone area are weak. So when you look at these factors, it makes them vulnerable.
Right. Compounds all the efforts that you put in.
Yes, it makes them vulnerable. But as a government on our side, we are trying to break the circle of it. And how are we doing it?
Okay, we'll ask you to pause there. Let's take in our first call on this from Birnin Kebi. Umar Anachi, I believe, calling in from Birnin Kebi. Hello. Hello.
Yes.
All right.
Good morning.
Yes.
Sorry, good evening, Cyril.
Okay, good evening.
Yeah, welcome. I'm Umar Anache, as usual, calling from Birnin Kebi.
Yeah.
Back to your first topic.
Yeah, well.
I would like to appeal to the authority concerned.
Yes.
There is this campaign office situated at the Godangaji Quarters area here in Birnin Kebi.
Okay.
That campaign office playing a music, not only loud, but very loud, to the extent that it disturbs everybody in the area.
Okay, fine.
I would like to appeal to the authority concerned.
Okay.
Please come to our rescue.
All right. Okay.
Then, finally, I would like to Nigerians to stick to Obasanjo's advice not to hand over Nigerians to hoodlums, thieves, and hooligans. May God continue to bless
Umar,
our country.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, Umar, I was just going to say that it was unfortunate that you couldn't get through while we were on that matter, talking about the campaigns and as 2019 approaches. But now we're on the issue of response mechanisms in times of disaster. It would seem that you're already off the line, and I was hoping to pick your brain a bit on that. But it's quite possible you'll call back later on. So let's return to the studio.
So as I was saying, that if you look at the groups that are vulnerable to this, these are the set of people that are vulnerable to this. And as a government, we are committed to break the circle of a perennial flood in our system, in the sense that we put a lot of factors, a lot of visions into being. And the three things we look at it, we are going to look at it in a form of short term, medium term, and long term. And when you are looking at the short term that we put, the strategy we put in place in terms of the short term is clear public enlightenment, that we need to tell people about what they are prone to. We improve on effective and efficient communications. We put strategy in place that are holistically sustainable and highly affordable. And if you look at our medium strategy about the whole thing, is that we try as much as possible to put what we call the social investment program, where one way or the other, we try to empower our people so that they will have access to education. If you look at the way we try to improve the infrastructure in terms of education, the feeding program we put in place, all this is just to encourage our people that they should have access to education. Is a form of social investment. Again, we have a sort of empower program. These are social investment program we put in place. And when you look at our long term, we try as much as possible to ensure that we have a policy in place. And that policy in place is that, one, is that we should identify structures, infrastructures that are in place that could improve our drainage system. We should improve urbanization, building codes in our area. We should have a clear law that regulates the way the buildings are being built. And again, we are building all the responders on what they need to do. And again, before all this, we have some parastatals that might have conduct what we call risk assessments, risk profile, and vulnerability analysis of each state. So we try as much as possible to look at the peculiarity of each state and address it accordingly. And we ensure that the government, the private sector, and the non-government are working hand in hand. And in such doing, you will discover that the people orientation is well addressed about what they are prone to. The government put a lot of strategy in place. We have a lot of policy in place to address this, and we are getting a good result. If you compare what happened in 2012 and what happened in 2018, you will discover that we are really on top of all these challenges.
All right. Well, in your initial comments, you started talking about interagency collaboration. How far with that? Because when you have situations like this with different agencies who have a role to play in either preventing these disasters or responding in times of these disasters, how well is this collaboration?
Yeah, I think that is our major strength, and every disaster management agency must build on that. You have to have interagency collaborations because you cannot do it alone. Let's take, for instance, I cannot have to buy and maintain earth-moving equipment preparatory for building collapse.
Right.
But if my stakeholder, for instance, the Abuja Development Control, has those equipments, I think I have nothing to worry. All I need to do is to maintain that strength and maintain that collaborations, so that when there is such need, I'll just call them and then they will activate their plans. And that is the essence of having the emergency response plans. You have to have all your stakeholders together, and then everybody should be able to build on his or her own strengths, and then tell the kind of equipments that they can be able to have, and then for what period of time and for how many, for instance, large society or large affected community. So then once there is need for that, you just activate that plan. So you don't have anything, and that is why you don't have to have all the equipment. Like I said, budgetary issues are now the main issues. So all you need to do, you just keep having that, and it is really working hard for us in the FCT especially. We just had fire incident at one of the filling stations, and come and see the collaborations. All the response agencies came with their different kinds of equipment,
right,
and it was able to.
We reported that
exactly,
on Network News
exactly.
With,
so that is the essence of the collaborations, and everybody, including Army, came with their equipment, and the roles are there, well defined. Everybody knows. By the time you are at the scene of the incident, there is incident commander, there is different kind. So all you need to do is to key in and then get the result.
And before the incident, we could have conduct what we call a sort of simulation exercise.
Simulation, exactly.
So that we define the roles and responsibilities of all the key stakeholders. So when there's any form of emergency, each of these stakeholders perform their roles and under one incident commander.
Now, one thing that is always people have always asked about, I am told that now there's beginning to be, an emergency, a national emergency number, and certainly in the past, people have complained about that it's so difficult to call for help. You don't have an emergency number.
I think this is something that we need to commend the government for putting that 112 a toll-free emergency number. And it is, we have been running the adverts for that on NTA and newspapers so that people will get used to it. The 112 emergency number was done by the National Communication Commission.
Right.
And the exchange is fully working 24
And it
hours.
works.
It's
It
working. It's working 24/7. As I'm talking to you, the response agencies are there, represented. The operators are there. They will answer the call, and then they will pass the call to the dispatcher. And the dispatchers are those response agencies, so that you don't have to call long numbers, and then you have to trace who is going to do this and what. And it's really working. And another thing that is well commendable is about the risk we are talking about. The Office of the National Security Advisor, in collaboration with the British High Commission, has just put up the register, National Risk Register for the nation. Initially, we don't have such register. So we can't be able to say these are the risks in these and those areas. So we need to have those risks registered, and we have to also get the ownership of those risks. Because if you don't have the ownership, the response will be there, but the post-disaster management is going to be zero. So we need to identify who owns what and what risk before you can be able to really work on it and then be able to evaluate the post-disaster effect of it.
All right. What's the role of environmental journalists in the prevention and the enlightenment of issues of disasters, flooding, whether building collapse, fire?
Well, their roles are pretty clear, to create awareness both in the media, both in societal awareness, getting people to know more about issues of environment and how to mitigate them. Whether you're talking about flood, whether you're talking about earthquake or tremor or whatever that is happening, you need awareness. You need to get people together and then to bring issues of environment to the front burner.
Right.
Such that,
especially in the matter of human activities.
Yes, yes. You will discover that human activities, if natural disasters happen naturally, human activities contribute more to these disasters. Whether the things we do, whether we're cutting down trees, whether we are, for example, burning more fossil fuel, polluting the atmosphere, creating a lot of pollution in terms of both sea, both atmospheric and so on. There's a need to create a lot of awareness and to let people know that these things affect us and we cannot afford not to do anything about it.
Right. While we are still on it, one of the biggest challenges we face in this country is to do with refuse disposal.
Yes.
And the way this has been done indiscriminately, even in the big cities,
Yes.
and even where there is some form of system of collection of refuse, the disposal poses a challenge where you have no sites. How do we address all this? How do we bring this to the front burner, as you say?
Well, by talking about it more and more, like what we're doing now, we need to talk more about it. We need to create more awareness. We need to get to the rural areas. We need to get to the urban slums where you have a lot of refuse being dumped. You know, you go to Yanya, outside Yanya now today, you find quite a lot of slum, dumping of waste and on the highways and so on. We need to create more awareness to sensitize people, to let them know about disaster that is impending by the consequences of human action. You know, if we do not tell people that these things have direct impact on us, then we will be living with disasters. We'll be living with time bombs, you see, because even flooding.
Okay. All right. Let's get to the phones. We have a caller from Makudi. Kene from Makudi calling in. Hello. Thanks for joining us. Yes.
Hello, good evening.
Yes.
Good morning, sorry.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, hello.
Go right ahead.
Yes, I would like to contribute here that I am so much impressed about what the people are saying in the studio there. The disaster management, you see, it has to do with serious awareness creation and sensitization, just the way you people are doing on TV today. This should go across the radio stations, the newspapers, magazines, and then, of course, trying to launch a kind of town hall meeting, and if possible, to rural environment, you can tell people in the local languages, let them see the need, and let them understand what this thing is all about. At some point in this country, people try to do some certain things, but when you don't even take it in the form of sensitizing people, trying to create awareness, people seems not to get it correctly. So I would advise here strongly that if that's really, do it the way I said, by trying to carry out this awareness campaign program across the country, I think it will help us, and it do a lot of work that may be coming to discuss on TV and on radios and maybe publishes in newspapers. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Well, just like he said, going to the grassroots.
Yeah. Because the impact of all this disaster is to the grassroots. And the most important thing, the key factors, is the human activities. We deal with that. When we are talking about disaster management, orientation of our people is very, very important. If we put a lot of policy, if government put a lot of policy in place, if you don't take care of the orientation of our people, we will still be going back to the zero level. We won't achieve anything. So today, our government is trying to improve on the orientation of our people by creating a lot of public awareness about what they are susceptible to, what they need to do. Because some people, they even to dispose their dustbins, they will just put it anywhere. To dispose their plastic, they will just put it anywhere. But today, the government is putting a lot of infrastructure in place that we can even recycle the plastic. We can do a lot of things with our waste disposals.
All right. Well, so far this year, we have seen cases of other disasters beyond the flood. Yes. And in FCT, for instance, one thing that's been grappled with regularly, unfortunately, is building collapse.
Yeah.
And again, responding to such situations. And we also know that many a times when a disaster occurs, a lot of people, yes, they want to help, but they're going about it the wrong way,
yes,
which may further jeopardize lives and exacerbate the situation. How are you going about this?
I think the major thing that we are trying to really concentrate on is the issue of cordoning the area. And that's the first thing first when there is a disaster. And in this, we have those who are responsible for cordoning the area. By the time it is cordoned up, and then the rescue mission can now start. Unfortunately, you find out that even with the security agencies around, people are still moving in. You have to talk to the security personnel there to really push people away from the scene of the incident. And so we are trying to devise means that immediately an incident occurs, definitely we'll have to take charge of the entire scene and make sure that nobody has access. And some of them are going with a good mission, but some are really going just with video to take, unfortunately, start sending those videos and tapes. And
that's what we see nowadays.
Which is very
things
bad.
Are happening,
it's very
and you
bad.
find that so many people are more interested in taking pictures with their smartphones and posting on social media.
One of the key challenges that we are really facing in all this is the crowd control.
Right.
And the way we are tackling the crowd control is, one, effective and efficient communications by us having the 112 in place,
right,
which we allow. Because if there's a gap in response, people are going to fill in the lacuna. Oh, yeah. So we will not allow them to fill in the lacuna, the gap. So that's why our response itself has to be swift, prompt, and effective by using our 112 communication system very well, which we are really training our first responders, especially the security people that deals with crowd control and condoning of the area. Because if the crowd control is not effective, the responders will not be able to work effectively and they won't get results. So, and in any emergency scene, there are always two cordons. We have the inner and the outer, which are being managed by an agency that is responsible for that.
And again, really, even among the responders, we must have means of communication. Right. We must build our communication networks so that if there is any emergency, you just have to get in touch with all the response agencies, and by then you'll be able to really communicate effectively with those who are responsible for crowd management before the rescue agencies come to start rescuing. So we must build our own communication network. Also, you find out that all of us are operating, we don't have walkie-talkie. We can use our smartphone with PTT to do that. We are not doing that. Even the police, they don't have walkie-talkie. So you find out that communication is not really very effective. So before you get to the scene of the incident, you should be able to know who is the incident commander, who is this, who is that, so that by the time you come, you will be able to have access directly to go and key in and start your mission.
And that's one of the reasons that we are carrying out a lot of workshops, that all the responders should identify themselves during the peacetime. They'll be able to carry out a sort of simulation exercises before any form of emergency. We've developed what we call the response plan. The response plan defines the roles and responsibilities of each of the responders, of each of the stakeholders. Like the ambulance services, this is what they need to do at the scene. This is the person who is going to be the incident commander for effective and efficient collaboration of their activities.
Right. When everything is in place, it's likely that response to disasters and tragedies would be swift and effective. And the only thing left here is what happens after, in terms of remediation, relief, and that has also been a challenging aspect for the whole process of emergency and disaster management. Post-disaster, here where people are receiving succor of some kind or the other, whether it's adequate. From flooding, we've had stories. In fact, from 2012, there were stories of those victims who up till 2-3 years later, they were yet to receive what was promised. How do we manage situations like this?
I think our evaluation system, post-disaster evaluation, definitely we have to build it up again. You find out that we don't really carry out the post-evaluation, the evaluation of post-disaster events. If we do, there is no need to have, when you had a flood this year that claims 1 life, and then next year again, it will come and claim 2 lives. We need to identify what really caused the flood, and then mitigate or do away with it, and then follow up to those victims or those who were affected to make sure that they are really well taken care of. But in most cases, you find out that those that are even taken to the hospitals, it's our own responsibility to really go there and make sure that we handle them till they are discharged from the hospitals. All this we need to build upon, and that will come when, after the disaster, the agencies, all the stakeholders has to meet for debriefing. We need to also identify our gaps.
I have a different view concerning that, really. I believe that the problem we normally have, when we normally have this post-disaster problem, is that there is no good leadership. 80% of what we've been experiencing in the past is that no policy to take clear ownership, to provide clear political will. If you look at the way we responded in 2012 and the way we responded to post-disaster relief, which is the recovery, you will discover that in 2018, we provided what we call clear ownership of the situation, clear political will of the situation. And you will see that the chief executive himself, His Excellency, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, was moving from one state that were affected with all this, with all the key stakeholders that are involved in reconstruction and rehabilitation, which must start from the beginning of the disaster.
Let me bring the media in here. As a journalist, I mean, the media is awash many times with reports of victims of disasters, either being abandoned or, relief materials meant for them being carted away or being shared by others.
Well, this is where reporting on such kind of issue comes in, because if you follow up from the time the disaster happened, right on to the time the victims are settled in camps and taken to hospitals and so on, following up on the relief materials, because sometimes you hear stories about relief materials disappearing, people taking them away, and these are things that media can report on and can focus on and give adequate investigation on some of the things that are happening, If you do that and follow up regularly, then you will find that to some extent culprits will be apprehended, and then that will be mitigated to a lesser extent, So you won't be able to find it carrying on for a long time.
Again, for agencies who have responded, when it comes to relief for victims, there are also issues about how to ensure, equitable application of...
But if there is a proper horizontal and vertical communication, we won't have problems. If there is discipline in the system, we won't have any problem. If we are clear leadership who are being performed, if the people that are affected knows their rights, and the proper evaluation is being carried out from day one, you will discover that all will be well.
Yes, and you need to do needs assessment too.
Yes.
Needs assessment in terms of who deserves what.
That's it.
You need to do a needs assessment, because
then
needs cannot be the same.
And then there is a standard, international standard, on how each relief could be shared. So if you follow the standard, this standard is set up by the United Nations. If you follow the standard, there will be adequate resources and it will be enough.
Even in the terms of relief, there's also the challenge of coordination.
Yes.
People, victims of disasters who are either camped, sometimes inadequate facilities in those camps, and then the hordes of sympathizers who go there to donate, and as he said, no needs assessment, and nobody coordinates.
You are talking about an unorganized camp, but if the camp is organized,
well organized,
there must be standard for following that. And if you look at the like the FCT settlements. It's just an open settlement. It's not an organized camp. And so therefore everybody can walk in and walk out. And so when you take the relief, sometimes even when you interview the IDPs there, they will say that they don't trust their leadership. Don't give to our leaders. Because by the time you give them, their boots of their cars are open. They'll just rush to the boot and zoom up. So what we do is that the standards are there. And the best thing, like they all said, is to carry out the needs assessment. The needs assessment is very important. You need to know even what type of food you are giving to who. You can't go and give carbohydrates to somebody who is diabetic. So when you carry out that assessment, you'll be able to really share those food according to the sphere standard, which is called the sphere standard. And even water, there is how you should give water to every displaced person. And then you must give him adequate. By the time you measure that, you find out that it is adequate. Water for drinking, water for washing, water for everything. The same thing with food for household. If you take them, for instance, if you take 50 kg of each type of food and give to a household, it will take them at least minimum or maximum of 1 month.
Well, it all depends. It goes back to planning. I remember in 2010, when I was the disaster manager of Lagos State, and about 5,000 people were displaced. We camped them. In Lagos State, we already have a camp that whenever there's any form of disaster, we move these people in there. So you do a clear enumeration of the people that you are bringing in. You will know their sex, the number of the male, the adult, and you'll be able to give them what they require by doing what we call risk assessment, evaluation, and proper censor.
All right, as we wind down this program,
and
just
monitoring
one more thing.
too.
Yes. And monitoring, monitoring and evaluation.
Just one thing left. Yes, the flooding we saw this year, well, the rains have gone now, or are going, and the next question is the post-flood disaster implementation plan you have in place. Can this plan be trusted to take care of this situation so that in 2019 we do not come back and start facing the same issues all over again? As quickly as you can put that on.
Yeah, if we look at the plan being placed in for the post-disaster recovery, it could be looked into 3 phases, as I said earlier. We are looking at the one, the short term, the medium term, and the long term. At the short term, really, we are creating a lot of awareness. We are carrying out a lot of workshops where the people are going to be carried out. We are going to identify the structures, what we need to put in place, so that all this perennial flood and the impact of this perennial flood will be stopped. The circle, we are going to break the circle, so that we will ensure that the impact of flood on our people will be greatly reduced. And we are going to improve their social income. We are going to reduce their vulnerability and risk, and we are going to build the resilience of these communities.
Right, and for you?
Yes, I think it has to be all-inclusive, and we have to imbibe the culture of disaster risk reduction, which is really paying, and it is the in thing now globally. Everybody should be involved in the disaster risk reduction measures, and then also we have to make sure that the disaster risk reduction is incorporated into the development plans and well budgeted for.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to get more rains, according to... yes, it's not going to stop. We're going to next year. We're going to get more rain, and we don't know how it's going to be handled. But I think since we know we are in for more rains, we should fund efforts to map and communicate flood risks. We should also invest in flood resilient landscapes and infrastructure. You know, we should also do more of research and monitoring of our rainfall patterns. You know, we need to study that and know how this is going on, and then cut carbon emission.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Cut
again,
carbon emission.
And lastly, we are coming up with a plan that
global warming.
We are coming up with a plan that is going to be a contingency plan that is catch backup in each of the states.
Yes.
And we are building all the SEMA of each state in the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
All right. And it is on that note we'll have to leave the discussion. And thank you to Usman Jimada of the Forum on Environmental Journalism. Thank you for coming.
Welcome.
And Idris Abbas, Director General, FCT Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And Dr. Olufemi Oke of Sonyitulu, Head Task Force National Early Warning and Response Mechanism in Nigeria, and Senior Technical Advisor to the Vice President on Disaster Risks Management. Thank you. And thank you too for being part of this program. Next week we'll reach you again on NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.